We'll end the meeting at 5:32. All right, so for roll call, I'll just say everyone's name and yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll just say everyone's name. So let me just go see who is here again. We have Taryn, Senator, Sean, Senator, Scott, Treasurer, SJH Treasurer, Reese, Senator, Patrick, Executive Vice President, Makira, FYA, Michelle. Michelle, can you remind me of your position again?
Associate Director of Communications.
Associate Director of Communications, thank you. Mershad, Senator, Maria, FYA, Liam, Finance Board Chair, Kalechi, Senator, Kai, Senator, Julius, FYA, Josue, Assistant Speaker, Francis, SJ President, Candice Martinez Stone, Executive Director for Leadership and Governance, also serves as the SJ Advisor, she, her pronouns. Myself, Speaker, the SJ Advisor, and then we have Dr. Young, who's Vice President for Student Affairs. Welcome. And is Dr. Brown going to be here as well?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay. And we have Dr. Brown. Could you remind me of your position? Is it also Vice President for Student Affairs?
Assistant Vice President.
Assistant Vice President. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's look at the agenda. Actually, I moved to amend the agenda. There has been an SL that was sent to me. Here, I'll show you what it is. SL 43, promotion of all communication department members and additional bonuses. And so this is what the agenda would look like. So there's a second from Rashad. Is anyone opposed? The motion passes. Let's look at the minutes from last week. Moves to approve the minutes. Is there a second? Sean seconds it, and the motion passes. Oh, is anyone opposed? My bad. Motion passes. I'm just gonna show you guys this amended agenda just because we already voted on it. So this is what to expect. So let's go into the first thing, which is SL 42-1920. So this is, we're voting just on the amendments to the plan of organizations. So just for background, for those that don't know, the plan of organization it just provides a formal structure for shared governance within the University of Maryland. And so basically, like, we comply with the Board of Regents on the policy for shared governance as based by the University System of Maryland. And so it just basically like gives us the guidelines on how shared governance works at our university. And so just due to that system is our role as one of the Senates to vote on any changes that have been made to the plan of organizations, just because we abide by this in our shared governance policies. And so the change is Article 4, Section 1. And so for that don't know or might already know, we have a relations committee. It's been kind of inactive for years now, and it's been quote unquote like replaced, but a lot of the functions that they do extend beyond what the Human Relations Committee did. It's been replaced by the Community Equity Advisory Committee. And so you can kind of see here what the new functions of that committee. So charged with advising the steering committee regarding issues relating to diversity and inclusivity. And so does anyone, so we're just voting on this change, just that we're complying with it. So does anyone have any questions about it? And if not, is there a motion?
just had a general question. It's not related to the things that are in it. Since you authored it, shouldn't some sponsors? I was just wondering. I'm not sure.
That's a good question. Is it okay if I author and sponsor? Yes, it's fine. Okay. Just to be sure. And Reese moves to approve SL 42-1920, and Josue seconds it. So all those in favor, just say aye in the chat, and I will count it. Nine, 10, 10, 4, 0 opposed, 0 abstaining, and Nayla Benet isn't here, so 1 non-present. And the motion passes. Today is April 20th. Okay, so let's move on to the next legislation. So here, oh, also welcome Callista. Thanks for coming. So Francis, do you want to just go ahead and introduce this?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So I'm here today on behalf of Callista, Michelle, and the rest of the communications department in support of this legislation for the promotion and, in effect, bonuses for the entire communications department. So as you know, during this pandemic, the communications department has been working so hard every week, every day to fulfill not only SGA requests, but requests of information to be put out to students through from the university. And all of that has required more of them than their typical duties. And as such, I have come up with a pay scale according to pay scales that already exist. And so everyone will be receiving a certain amount. So as you can see, Callista, actually let me backtrack real quick. So prorated is what these numbers are. So this is not the exact amount they'll be receiving. It is just for the quarter of this semester, which is just, again, so it's a one-time payment of this stipend at this number. And so it's done in accordance to this pay scale for senators, as that is the time, the amount of hours that communications department is putting in. So this is a similar stipend to what a senator receives, as such. And then I know it can be a little confusing for Michelle's, but because of the title of her promotion, and the stipend for that quarter being less than everyone else's, I just gave her an additional bonus out of the pay scale. It's confusing. So I'd probably best if you had questions about it to ask now. So I'll open up. Or actually, I would rather give it away to Callista and Michelle, and then people ask questions. So you guys could go ahead and talk about this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for starting it off, Francis. I just wanted to say that through this really difficult time, we understand that a lot of SGA officers have also been putting in a lot of work to make these changes and this transition. The reason why I brought this up was that we recognize that the communications department have not only been fulfilling requests in the communications request form, we had been doing a COVID-19 initiative as well on top of that. In addition, as most of you all know, we have a lot of evidence that we can provide for you all. So if you have questions of like, give me evidence for this certain thing, like how many followers did you gain? What engagement have we been doing? I have a written out timeline of all the posts we've made and the collaborations we have done with other branches within SGA. The reason why we wanted to have a promotion or like stipend increase was because we noticed that with COVID-19, day by day, things were changing and things were coming up randomly. And I would have to reach out to one of my graphic designers and say, hey, like, can you make this graphic by tonight or by tomorrow? Just because things were constantly like rushing. So that put a lot of strain on our graphic designers, in addition to our social media coordinators, to constantly post and be active all the time, since we really heavily rely on social media now. And so we've been noticing there's a lot of stress within our department, within their own personal lives, but also keeping SGA prevalent within the community. And so if you have any additional questions, Michelle and I can answer them, of course.
Liam has said something in the chat.
Yes, for this quarter alone, they'll be making the same as last year.
I had two questions.
Mhm.
First, before this proposed raise, what was the original quarterly stipend? Doesn't say there. And also, where's this money being pulled from?
So, the current stipend for the quarter would have been under $250 for every person, $250 for the entire quarter. And 250 is the most. So Callista would receive that as the director, and everyone else would have received less than 250. So as you can see, that is a very large discrepancy for the amount of work that they've been doing during this pandemic. So that is again why we brought it up to this pay scale. And then, what was your second question?
Where's this money being pulled from?
So over the course of this semester, we have lost about, I would say, 5 upper executive branch members. So we lost a member in the communications department, so they are understaffed in as a body entirely. In addition to, we lost 4. No, we have never had a fully staffed, fully executive council. In addition to Zane losing a person and staff, so there's a lot of money in the executive branch pot for appointed positions to be paid because of all those positions not being filled, and that was even before the pandemic. I can't read everything that's being said. If you have a mic, I would prefer if you just say.
I can read it
Okay,
if
go
it
ahead.
doesn't work. So Liam asked, how much will this cost us, and will the lost members be able to make up for this cost? And then Scott responded, I think that is excessive. Is this? Oh, Scott, are you talking about something else?
I can address Liam first.
For the SL.
Okay, so for Liam, the total cost out of the executive branch officer pot would be $5,692. That's the number.
And then did you address the second question?
What was it?
Wait, Francis, can you see Liam's questions?
My internet is lagging, so I'm not getting all the chats as they come through. Like the last thing I see is all the eyes.
Okay, then I can just read it again. Will the lost members in the executive branch make up for the costs, or will you have to pull from other funds? Wait, Francis, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I heard you. I just have to double check the exact number. You know, because certain positions were never filled, certain positions were paid for halfway through the semester. Oh, Scott has the number.
You said we have paid out 63,000 so far. 63,000. And then Scott, do you want to talk about what you were saying earlier?
So, I just think that the raise is kind of excessive, even though it is a lot more work that's being given to the communications department. I think it's somewhat unprecedented to pay appointed positions at the rate of elected positions, and this would be quadrupling the amount of money that the communications department would receive in stipends for the fourth quarter, and by doing that, doubling basically how much they would be paid for the entire year, with half their yearly stipend being paid only in quarter four for this work. I just think it's a really large raise all at once, but I would support a bonus of like $200 to double what they had been paid, because I think it's about twice the work that the communications department has received.
Hello.
Mhm.
Okay, Josue here. I understand maybe why it can seem very excessive, but I think also given the nature of like everything going on right now, this is a very unprecedented moment where a lot more has been asked out of this team. And if we just kind of go back to, I guess, the original guiding principles we had when we came up with stipends for all paid SGA officers, was that it was based on just a number of hours that they work. So I think it's only fair that if this team is working even much more hours than they were expected to, that they should be paid accordingly. And I think this legislation reflects that.
With that, Brenda and I, when we wrote the stipends for appointed officers, we had that in mind, and there was a credit hour association with the positions. So I think that it's basically kind of already included.
But I think what's being said now is that even though that credit hour is included, because of the situation we're in now, it's beyond what was expected for them to be doing. Like, did you guys include, like, let's say, so you gave them like a credit hour of work that was expected for this position, but now they're working beyond that.
Yeah.
So how would they be compensated for any outside or overtime work?
Like, you would find the amount of work that they're in excess of and then pay that amount, rather than just kind of arbitrarily increasing it by 4 times.
I guess I'd like to bring up that we did this in accordance with this pay scale that already exists within our organization for the amount of credit hours for the amount of work that is being done, as Josue has pointed out, for that, if that makes sense. So this is done in accordance with the amount of hours they have worked previously, right? This is not about hours they continue to work. This is hours they have already worked as well. So it's already been a month and a half of work that they've already done in accordance to this pay scale that we have. Correct.
Thank you, Francis.
So are they working 4 times the amount of hours that were set out when they were originally hired for the position? Francis, can you hear me?
What'd you say?
So if you are quadrupling the amount of pay, are they working 4 times as many hours as they were before?
I'm sorry. I'm also trying to read the comments.
Said, I would agree that they should be paid even more than double, since that is not what they signed up for. And generally, people get paid more if they're having to work overtime, if that makes sense. And then Liam said initially, if they're working double the hours and double the pay, but quadrupling the pay for double the work seems excessive, and we have to look at an activity refund.
Okay, so my biggest thing that I think, again, I'm really talking for the legislation for Senate, for those who will be voting on this legislation. I want you to take into consideration, again, the time that's being spent by this department, that the fact that they're doing this in conjunction with classes and their own living situations that they have to deal with, and on top of all of this, and the pandemic as a whole, right? This is affecting everyone, and we have an opportunity to support and compensate members of the organization who have done their job and have gone past their job. And I think it's important that we recognize that. And just as essential workers are being called into work every day, they're being compensated more for their time to go out during this pandemic. So an increase of workload, an unexpected pandemic occurring for that. So if it is, so again, that's all I can really continue to say, right? Is that there's a reason for this. That was the reason. Any other questions regarding that? We can go all day about it. But, Patrick has something.
Hand button and it wasn't there. I forgot that this is not for collaborate. I have two quick things that I wanted to mention. I wholeheartedly agree with Francis that I think that it's really important that at this time, we're hearing a lot about sort of this idea that essential workers across the country are not being necessarily compensated for doing more. Well, I don't want to say like that. The comms department is like in danger by doing this kind of stuff, and they qualify for like hazard pay or anything like that. But I would like to point out that like we are at this organization while before they were not. So while in the past, you would rely on senators to have office hours, and you would rely on exec teams and exec council, all that kind of stuff to like focus on initiatives and stuff like that. None of the things that we are doing really at this point can function without a comms team. I think it's very important that they are compensated fairly. I don't want to dictate the amount. I think that is still for the Senate to decide. But my next point is, can some people from the Senate sort of air their, because this is going to come to a Senate vote, and in maybe like the spirit of moving things along, like what does the Senate feel about these amounts? If you don't boost the amounts, would you be down to change the amounts or vote on them as they are? That way we can just try to get some action items going on here.
Just real quick, there are 3 questions. So Julie's had a question. How many hours do comms department have to work now due to the current situation? If someone can answer that.
I'll leave that for Callista to answer.
The question was, how many hours do we work now?
Mm-hmm.
We work, it depends for each position. For graphic designers, I would say, I can't say how long they take per graphic, but every time someone puts in, every time someone puts in a request, they usually don't give us enough time because we also are doing an initiative at the same time. We also, I can give you all a timeline of what we've been doing and the things that we have done and done actively, but I can't give a specific number of hours just because there are so many projects going on. And I don't make them write their hours in a spreadsheet. I don't keep track of it through an app. Just based off of the meetings I have with them every Monday, they tell me all the things they've been doing, and I work. For me personally, I can tell you I do a lot more hours than I thought I was going to do. As director, when I first started, I said, okay, I can lead meetings, I can do these different things, but now I'm having to meet with my team to create initiatives. And in addition to that, I'm working, trying to be in part of these meetings with Francis and Patrick with the Academic Success Center, which I thought I wouldn't have to be in the beginning. I'm totally fine with them now. But the fact that like I'm part of this process of putting out information because we solely rely on the comms department, I feel like the amount of hours I can't give exactly.
Thank you. So
Okay.
Hidai actually has a question as well. Do you know how many hours that they worked before? I know that you just kind of explained that they report to you.
Yeah. Well, when they first applied, I remember social media works 2 to 4 hours. And I can let you know a week, 2 to 4 hours a week, or either that or it was 3 to 6 hours. I can let you know for sure they do more than 6 hours a week. I would say even double, triple those hours because they have to be active. There's more posts on social media from all UMBC orgs. So with all these consistent posts and consistent stories, they're doing way more than that.
And Rashad, go ahead.
Okay, so I had a quick question that's going to lead into my general comment. When did this period start? This quarter? Does anyone know?
It started.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Josue.
Hi, it started basically just before we all went to like full like stay at home quarter. It started March 1st basically.
First, right. So I think that, you know, since this whole thing started, Department of Communication has been on top of everything. They've been the main point of contact between the undergraduate student body and, you know, faculty and staff and us. Like literally the moment we got any updates, they were the first people to post it and, you know, give the information to the undergraduate student body, like whether it be about grading, refunds, any of that. Like they've been on top of everything since the beginning, right? Besides that, they're also constantly looking for ways to get students engaged during this whole pandemic. They're constantly working on new projects that are engaging not only to us officers, but also to the undergraduate student body, like, you know, be the hand washing video or the new TikTok things that are doing, the graphic design, like they're doing a lot. And frankly, I can say that they're doing a lot more than many of us senators. And I think that's why that they deserve the stipend increase that they're getting for this quarter. Yeah, it's going to be the same as an elected officer, but if they're doing more work than an elected officer, then they deserve the money. And you know, that's all I got to say.
Michelle. I'm just trying to read the chat. All right, so Reese brought up the idea of doing a straw poll. So the idea of no raise, double, or quadrupling it. Reese, do you want to kind of talk about that, or I mean, I'm sure it's pretty self-explanatory, but no, okay. And Naila Benay, go ahead. I see your hands up.
Oh, I just wanted to say somewhere along the lines to what Rashad and Taryn are saying, like in the chat. I know for sure that the comms department is doing way more than a lot of us combined. And especially like Callista, she's constantly like the TikTok thing that today, like we're sending in stuff. I just feel like for all the work that they're doing that I can't even imagine doing right now, in addition to their classes and like doing other things, I just feel like they really do deserve this. And I think that this is fine the way it is.
Just one piece, just a legislative thing. Does someone from Senate have to sponsor this? I feel like no.
No,
Oh, okay.
because
Cool. All right, that was my own question. So in that case, let's see if we can kind of move this along. Does anyone else want to raise their hand to say anything? And if not, is there a motion? Josue moves to approve SL 43-1920, seconded by Taryn. So all those in favor say aye, then oppose nay. Those say aye. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And the motion passes. Congratulations.
I just want to thank everyone in Senate because again, our communications department has been doing the most to conduct all of the work that they've done. And thank you for allowing us as an organization to show that for them.
Thank you guys for coming in. I really appreciate what you guys have done and all the work that the comms department's been doing, and I think this really shows that. I know that there was like conflict on how much they should be paid, but I agree in reality, like they're doing a lot more work than even some of us are. So I think they should be compensated just as much.
Communications department, just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone. We truly appreciate this. And I know our other department team members are going to be very, very excited just for the fact that we have a lot of great things planned for the rest of the semester. And we love that you all send us your videos. We want to incorporate more of you all into our social media. And we just truly appreciate it. And we can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Calista.
Thank you all.
So you guys are free to stay or go. Just up to you guys. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. So Dr. Young is here and also Dr. Brown is here. And you would like to take it away, Dr. Young or Dr. Brown?
Okay, I will take it away. Francis last week, I realized some of the things you are working on overlap with the survey that we did of students. And to see the best way following it and they're struggling with. So for those of you that may not be aware, we developed a very short survey. Several folks in student government, undergraduate student government, as well as graduate student government were asked to review and work with us on it. And we wanted it to be something people could fill out in just a few minutes that you didn't really have to think about. So students, it was in 3 different waves because we also wanted to be able to respond individually to anyone who needed help, because I don't think you ask people if they need help and then ignore it. So we did it in 3 different waves, 4 days apart, and the final survey for undergraduates closed on Sunday. We got an 11% response rate, so not really high, but actually higher than some surveys we put out because students are over-surveyed. And when we compare it to demographics, so generalizing broadly is probably problematic, but it still gives us some insight into what students are thinking or feeling. So number 1, it's 60% female when we know more at UMBC. So women responded more frequently than men, and that's not at all unusual in our surveys. But secondly, more seniors. We had, I think, something like 43% of seniors in this survey, and they are not 43% of the population, while there were only 11% first-year students. So upper-class students responded disproportionately. That said, some of the survey's results were, I think, fairly interesting. I don't know if any of you took it, but the very first question was, yes, I've got this. I'm good. About 25% of our students, about 1/4 of those responded, said, yep, I got this down, I'm okay. 11% of our students that responded said, no, I don't have this at all and I need some help. And then the vast majority, almost 64%, were in the middle, saying there's some things going on, I'm kind of handling the transition, but there's to be better at. Okay. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So overall, most people had something they needed help with. So that 11%, out of that 11%, you didn't have to allow us to contact you, but most students did. I'd say over 2/3 of the students that took it said they would welcome outreach. And so we spent last weekend and throughout this week, and we're still trying to reach a couple of folks. Everyone in that category that said they absolutely needed help was called and checked in with personally on the phone to make sure that we knew what they were talking about. And we're theming those reports. I think most of those reports range from, I already was struggling and now I'm really medical condition and now it's exacerbated. Someone in my family is ill, to I don't have computer access, so I haven't been able to get classes. So a wide range of what was in there, but clearly people needed help. In that middle group, there were the number one thing that popped up. There were several, and I don't think any of these will surprise you. It was difficulty focusing, too many distractions at home, not being able to do sort of the academic transition as smoothly as they might have hoped. And also that COVID is impacting my mental health, that I either feel sadder or more anxious or just unable to focus than I usually am. So about 600 students said that piece out of the 1,100 who responded, and they all immediately got an email that gave them very explicit instructions on how they could reach out to the counseling center, but also how they could participate in several different times of webinars that the counseling center is offering called Coping with COVID. In addition, there was another group of students who said they were having difficulty with the academic platforms faculty were using, that they didn't have enough bandwidth, or they didn't have a computer. And we shipped about 70 of those over to our information technology folks, and they were able to either do loaner computers, help people figure out alternatives, teach them how to use what they needed to use. And so that part has been going very well. The final pieces are around helping students reach out to faculty and others, because they obviously didn't say which faculty they hadn't been able to reach. And so in lieu of that, we are about to send something to the remaining folks we haven't reached out to yet, saying that if you've had difficulty reaching, and I think some of you have heard me say this before, that as we moved quickly, we different offices and different faculty are using different means to communicate, different platforms. And so it's offering our office phone number and our email address and do a guaranteed 24-hour callback, because we've got a lot of people that can get back in folks to try to help internally to get people where they need to be. There's a lot of other things that were lower in the scores, but still pretty big. Maybe 100 hadn't done their academic advising, but right now there are people from the admissions office calling anybody who hasn't registered and reminding them that they need to register and how to get in touch with their advisor. So we're hopeful that that piece will be taken care of shortly. There were 100 folks that needed to get in touch with the academic success folks, and those folks are reaching out. So we're trying to put a lot of that in action, but we wanted you to know what we were doing, and we'd like to share these results with other students. And so I'm really here tonight for two goals: one, to let you know what we found, and two, to ask for your advice in how we might get this out. Two suggestions. One were scheduling me to do a video with some of the things on the screen to be able to share with people what the results were and what we're doing in response to it. And the second one was that we do a town hall and share the information, but allow people to call in and ask questions. And anything else you might suggest, or just leave it alone because nobody's really interested in this. So I open the floor.
If anyone has any questions, if I don't see your hand, you can also ask in the chat.
Or feedback.
Or feedback. I just have one quick question. For the town hall, so would you just be reporting the information, and then would you have like other SJ people come on it, or would it be like how the one with like you and Dr. Basky and other administrators, like how that town hall was, but just with this information instead? Does that question make any sense?
No, I think we could do that. That's what I'm asking. So it was better to have those folks. It would be better to have any areas where people have questions. It could be folks from the counseling center, or it could be tips. I don't know. I just know that there's a lot of really people took time to lay out, and I think it's important to let them know that we're listening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the tips from the counseling center would be really helpful. Because I know, like, obviously it was seen in the survey, people are feeling this way, and having tips like broken down would make it a lot easier to manage the day. So that's something I'd be willing to see. And also Taryn agrees. I asked, would these help with possibly fall 2022? Could you explain your question, Kai? I don't think I'm getting it.
Hello. Um, would these like tips also carry over with concerns about summer and fall semesters?
I think summer, we don't know yet where we're going to be with fall. And we just reformed a couple of groups today to start that planning. And even as we start the planning, we know it has to be different options. People have talked about everything from having people move back on campus, and then the possibility that we'd get another spike and need to, which we don't want to do, mind you, close again. We could maybe start later or earlier. We could do some hybrid where some people live on campus and some people stay at home. And we could just be operating normally. So yes and no. Yes, if we are doing any form of this again, absolutely, this would be helpful. But if we're back on full swing, hopefully we wouldn't need it. But we are not going to know until we're through this dip and then are getting a little more information from the models.
Also a question from
No.
Wendy also has a question. Could we get any tips from the Academic Success Center as well?
Sure. And what would be the best ways to get those out? One of the things when Francis and I talked, and the thing that made us think of the videos and others, is that we also know from the calls that there were people that were worried about not doing well in classes that didn't know about the pass-fail options. There were people, so clearly some of the written materials are not going very deeply. And I don't know if those individuals would be also not getting the other kinds of ways we could communicate this, or if communicating it in social media or through a town hall would get more people involved. On Friday, the graduate school and the research departments did a town hall on lab research, and they had 300 people show up, mostly of whom were students. Most were students.
I tend to find just like video information or information spread by video more engaging. So I think doing a town hall would probably be more beneficial, and seeing if we can incorporate like those different centers, counseling center, academic success center, and even maybe some SGA officers. It's a lot easier to relate when you see someone who's one of your peers also sharing information. And
Do you think this Friday is too soon?
For a town hall?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with it. Does anyone else have a problem?
Is Friday the best day?
There's two people that raised their hands, so I'll let them also speak. Go ahead, Mershad, and then after you can go Naila Vinay.
Hi, Dr. Young. I had a suggestion. So with the videos and the town halls and the mass emails I've been sending out, there's still a lot of students that are left in the dark because not everyone necessarily seeks out the information that UMBC puts out. So how feasible is providing some sort of academic incentive to, for them to read up on this stuff and get educated about what UMBC is doing and what the resources are available. I think academic incentives are a great way to get students engaged in something. You know, a survey gets a lot more responses if there's some sort of incentive tied to it. So I was just wondering how feasible that idea is.
I can't, on my side of the house, I can't do any academic incentive. And we would love to do prize incentives, but we're still trying to figure out how to do that. And Brittany or Dr. Brown might be able to shed some light on that. So incentives, absolutely. The academic incentives are beyond what I'm able to do.
I'm interested in what kinds of incentives at this moment in time might be desirable to students. There are limited things that we can do sort of given our current situation, but we certainly would try to figure out some incentives if you think that that would be helpful. Because I also agree with Dr. Young. I've heard of some students not really understanding what's happening with grading and things like that. And so would be happy to explore with you what kind of incentives that you think would drive students to read the information that's being put out.
And the other thing I'm asking to do, I'm going to Student Events Board, to OCSS peers. We're trying to look for ways that people can use their networks to get information out to students. Different, how do I say this? Like when we're on campus and somebody's having difficulties, I usually don't hear about that from the student. I usually hear about that from another student who says, I'm really worried about so-and-so. And then we're able to reach out and assist. And so I think the other thing that's been more difficult in this virtual environment is using those networks and making sure that a broad range of students know what's going on. So if there's any groups that you know that are large or might have networks, and at the end of that, asking each of them to make sure they're telling someone how they can get assistance if they need it. Because I agree, I think people are just on such overwhelm and they're sitting on screens all day that it's hard to figure out how to get things to people. But I like the idea of an academic, somebody from the Student Success Center and somebody from the Counseling Center. And maybe we just need to put tips out, because one of the things Dr. Lacey said, who did some of the calling as well, was the number of students who just really hadn't thought about something simple that they could do to change what was happening. You know, that it's just so overwhelming that they didn't stop to think, and that with a little bit of conversation, they could very quickly put something in action that would help a good bit. So it's one of the reasons I like that idea that I hadn't thought of. So thank you.
Naila, do you want to speak on your?
Yes, hi, Dr. and Dr. Brown. I have two things. So first, in terms of the incentive, the academic incentive, I think in response to Dr. Brown asking like what that would look like, I know personally for me and those around me, even though we have the pass-fail option, the just getting good grades is still kind of a feat because of our environments and things. So maybe like an extra credit assignment, something like that, that the teachers could hand out. That's like a quick 5 points or something like that could be just enough for people to take the survey. And then also I have a question about the town halls. So in the past with your town halls, how much engagement do those get? Because in terms of like people logging on and just sitting there and waiting for people to like answer questions, is there a way that maybe we could compile questions before and then do quick videos to just put on Instagram? Because I feel like that would be easier for people to watch and maybe more people would watch them.
We could do that as well. The last time we had, I forget the numbers. I can't remember if it was 800 or 1,000, but it was a large number. And we did collect questions in advance so that we could sort of lump them and then make sure that a lot of questions got answered. And then we also took them while we were in the room. But I also think we heard that it felt people liked it, but it was a lot of talking and not as much interaction. So we could also do smaller drop-ins, and I like the idea of little mini videos.
Rashad, you have
I
your hand up.
guess.
Yes. In terms of how we could sorry, English is not my first language. Incentivize students to follow up and read up on everything that the admin is doing. I know that there are some precedents with there is something called the STEM survey, where people who are signed up for that get $50 loaded onto their campus card. I mean, of course, it's a ridiculous amount, and I'm sure we don't have the funds to do that for every single undergraduate student. But maybe like a $5 on your campus card for next semester or something like that. And in terms of academic incentives, I know you said that that's not something that you could control. I know that there's some precedence with that as well, that I conducted a little survey earlier this semester, and I reached out to a lot of professors and I asked them if they could share this with their students in return for an extra credit opportunity. And a lot of them were more than happy to help out. So if that's something that could be done, an email, just be like, hey, professors, do you mind emailing this to all your students? Because I feel like students are more willing to read up on something if it's coming from their professors.
Yeah, we absolutely can do that. I just can't do it myself. Like, it's up to an individual faculty. That's all I wanted you to understand. I think it's a good idea. As you said, it has to be up to the individual faculty member, and I just didn't want you to think that I could do that myself. I can buy prizes, but I can't give credits in their classes.
Any other suggestions, comments, questions?
I have a question. I know many of us, we use WebEx and Zoom and things like that, but I know students use like Slack and Facebook groups and all of those things that we don't use professionally. And so I'm wondering if there are Slack channels that students are plugged into where information about grading, information about refunds, all of those things that we're pushing out through official communications. Is there a Slack channel where folks are dropping that information in? Because I know students tend to use Slack quite a bit.
Francis.
So I would like to give a great example of that. So in the computer science department, we have a Discord to get it dedicated for all, for every class from 201 to operating systems. And we have about 6 to 10 professors in that Discord. A lot of professors in the computer science department are using Discord for office hours, so students can share their screens and show the code that they're having a problem running. That's been very useful. I know Discord is a very popular method that I use when I'm just talking with friends or whatever I'm doing. We use Slack as an SGA internally to communicate. I use Slack to have actual WebEx type of meetings for my research lab. So I think some people are on it for different reasons. Like, we use it as an organization. But Slack channels, you can not only just create the channel itself, but you can also create sub-channels. Like, there's a Senate channel, so that people in that specific group can talk. So you could have, a Psych 100 channel and a Psych 101 channel. Just like in Discord, we have a Comp Sci 201 channel. And then within that, there's office hours, tutoring, homework help, project help. It gets really specific. And there's TAs in there and everything. So I think some of them exist and some of them don't, but it just depends on the department.
Well, great. We appreciate it. Is there someone that would be willing to be point if we needed to come back and we decided to do the town hall route?
I could do it.
Who said that?
I'm going.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for having me. And if anybody's interested more in any of this information, we're happy to share. And a particular thank you to all you're doing to push out information to students and to help them think about how to be successful in this transition. It's been really an important piece of what we're doing.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you. Have a good meeting.
You
Thank you all. Have a good one.
All right, I already said you too. Let's move on to the next thing, which is senator updates. So does anyone have any initiative updates or any projects that they've been working on in the last week or so? Any SGCs meet or give any updates? No. Any stories from office hours? ACC is still canceled. Oh, that's okay, Kai. Yeah, so are mine. I haven't gotten any emails from my. All right. That's okay. So just keep in mind we only have 3 meetings left. Until we're done with the semester pretty much, or at least with, yeah, basically until we're done. Last day of classes is on the 12th, so that's when we're done. So in the next couple meetings or the next 2 meetings, we're going to be working on our transition documents, just so we can get a gauge of how we're supposed to be doing that and kind of prepare the next administration the best we can. Oh, that's okay. No one can be your office hours, but I'm glad you had them. That's all that matters. Yeah, so just trying to prepare the next group the best we can, especially now, because we really want to like document what happened now and what we did to move forward in this time. So we're just going to be working on those things. And the last meeting, I'm going to try and make it as memorable as I can before we all leave. So does anyone have anything to share before I adjourn the meeting?
Yes, I have a couple announcements.
Okay, go ahead, Francis.
So as you all passed the JR, and it did go through finance board last week, I have some really good updates about that. So in response, the provost reached out to me, which was kind of surprising actually. And I was able to address the concerns that we had, I was able to address the concerns that we had that were brought up in the JR. And so this week I'm meeting with all the college deans. So today I met with the dean of the College of Natural Mathematics and Sciences, and it was a great conversation. Just to go off a little bit about what they said, they're currently in the process of retraining professors on the process and procedure on teaching classes online, because they know that some professors are struggling with that. They are using the resources within the college, such as the STEM LOC, tutoring, and other programs under the domain of that college to reach out to students and the community. I talked about the possibility of, I've been bringing up this idea of the university, or at least the colleges of the university implementing a temporary, or at least a mandate of a bereavement policy. For bereavement policies, if you do not understand, that has to do with anything that matters of the death of a family member, or anything that causes you to, like, you cannot come to work, right? So it's a policy that you have to go to work. And I'm asking the provost and the vice provost and everyone to heavily consider enacting the bereavement policy. The dean said he was in support of that, as it would not only adhere to students' concerns, but it would also help with professors who are going through this time, just providing a general process. So what the thing that they're saying right now is that students are not knowing the process, which is that if you are having to say a relative dies or a family member dies, and you have to attend the funeral and you cannot take your exam. In order of process, if your professor does not give you an excuse, you would have to go to the department chair. From there, you would go to the dean. And if the dean does not work, you'd have to go to academic undergraduate affairs, or basically Catherine Cole, who's the vice provost. And that is a lot of steps just for an exam. And during it being a pandemic, which was my main point, is that there should be some temporary mandate for this semester for students affected by it in any means. So instead, that one dean was on board, and I'm going to continuously pitch this throughout the week as I talk to their deans on campus about this bereavement policy. And again, the professors are struggling with this transition just as much as students. And I think that's something that we as an organization can start conveying to students. You know, of course, we listen to students and represent them and hear them and we get them the resources they need, but we also should be presenting this UMBC community, UMBC together, because we see a lot of students who are communicating with their professor, but they're not saying the other side. So I give a great example of me just communicating with my professor who was giving me a lot of work. And after that conversation, and also hearing what it's like for him to teach, it's his first year teaching here. So his experience has been completely changed as not only a first year professor at UMBC, but also having to now teach online all of a sudden. And he, at the end of the day, was able to change the policy for our class and not have a final exam. So these conversations that students should be having with their professors, if the course load is getting too much, is important because professors are doing as much as is and they're not paying attention to it. So that's something we can encourage students. It's like, look, if your professor is overwhelming you have to notify them, right? Otherwise, nothing's going to change and you're going to end up opting into the policy regardless. So those are just some things to be aware of. And my last thing is I just want to commend you again for recognizing the work and the time that the communications department has put in for the SGA organization. This is something that was, in my opinion, very necessary for all the work that they've done. It is important for us to show them that we see the work that they're doing and how they continue to work, even in a time of pandemic. So that's what I learned.
Thanks, Francis. All right, so I adjourn them. Wait, no one has any more announcements, right? Nope. Okay. I adjourn the meeting at 6:33. I'm gonna stop recording.